How are you doing, folks? Welcome to Takeo Tuesday. I almost said Takeo After Dark, but it's Takeo Tuesday. John Barber
Yeah.
here, along with Jason Cox and Dave Holdorf from the Takeo training team. We are super excited to have you with us, and this is going to be a fun one. Dave's going to take us on a deep dive through the new Takeo zoning controls. We call them Dash 5. You don't have to. You can call them whatever you want. We call them Dash 5 for one simple reason. They're the ones that came after Dash 4. Okay,
Right.
it's the fifth generation, but there's no other significance to the Dash 5 designation other than
Actually,
that.
actually, it's the fourth generation because we never had a
Yet
dash.
we skipped over Dash 2, right?
We skipped over three. We skipped over
We
three.
skipped
Yep.
over 3. Okay, we skipped over.
Yep.
We don't talk about Dash 3. We skip
We shunned them
4.
and put them in the closet. Yeah.
We shun 3, we go right to 4 and then to 5. We skip over 3, not like Monty Python, because that's 3 is the number for them, right? Anyway, welcome everybody. We're super glad to have you with us. Do me a favor, I want to make sure everybody knows where to ask questions. On your control panel, there's a little section there called chat/questions. Mark Amoroso has already figured out how to do it. If you could do me a favor and just go to that section and type in a hello and where you're from. That way we know you know how to ask questions, and we also know that you know that you're listening, and then that we're not, we haven't lost our connection and we're talking into the Ethernet. So we have Gilles from Montreal. We have Ernie from Mississippi. Jonathan from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, Greensboro, North Carolina, York, PA, South Windsor, Connecticut. Everybody's chiming in. We got Colorado, Red Deer, Alberta, Philly, Aberdeen. Oh boy, great, awesome. Shannon from Kansas City. Welcome, welcome. Excuse me. We're excited. Treat this like you would in a classroom situation. Pretend we can all see each other. Take notes, ask questions. We got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. So before I go into a coughing fit, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Holdorf. Dave, Jason in California. Dave, you're in Pennsylvania somewhere, right?
I am
out near
outside of Pittsburgh. Yep, outside of Pittsburgh today. Just finished up a training class here today, and tomorrow heading to Altoona to do some more training.
Oh.
So any of you guys local out here, come on by. We're going to go into obviously this control as well as some other stuff at that training session. So make sure you come on by. So with that being said, let me jump over and take over control of this thing, and let's go over the deep dive into the new zoning controls. So like John was saying, this is our Dash 5 controls. So last time we came out with the control platform or did any major revisions with the Dash 4s, that was around 14 years ago. Okay, so we've had a long laundry list of things that we wanted to add to these controls, mostly from our installer base out there. They asked for, it'd be great if it had this, and it'd be great if you could do that with it. So, or the challenges that they had to install. So that's what we came out with the Dash 5. So we've been working on this list and putting things together. So first off that I want to talk about, because everybody gets a little wonky when it starts thinking about controls and what it's going to do for you. Yes, like John said, we call them the Dash 5s. This is our next generation. But what I do like to say, it's the same thing, only better. Okay. We're not reinventing the wheel here. It's still going to be that same interface between your thermostats and your zoning that you're doing out there. But again, we've added some new things to it to make it easier to install. But there's also a few other things that we added to the system itself to make our systems more efficient as well. So the first thing I want to show you here is you can see just the picture of it on the outside. So here's the outside cover. And we did discontinue some items. So with the Dash 4s, we had a system out there. We had our standard boards, all right, which would be, say, the SR502-4. And then we also had the SR502-4-EXP, which was our expansion terminals. And the expanded boards had a few more functions that were more relevant and also customizable. If you just needed a simple interface between a thermostat and a circulator, your standard board is what you got. If you had a more advanced functions like your boiler that you had there, then you wanted to use the expansion. So what we did now is that we discontinued the standard boards and now everything we have has that expansion capabilities to it. So we know there was a price difference between the two of them, and it wasn't a very big price difference, but what we did was got rid of the basic controller, and then we met the pricing in the middle. All right, so we were able to drop the SKU set in half, therefore making selection much easier on what you needed for other applications. And if you didn't need the functions, it's rare that most boilers nowadays are going to use the functionality that you have on here. So here's the SR panels that we have. Not a lot has changed in the SR 501, so that's why I have that little asterisk right there, that star. So pretty much everything has remained the same with the SR 501-5. We did make some changes to the circuit board, the layout, as well as the cabinet and the cover that we have. And if we take a look at the zone valve control, same thing. We got rid of the standard boards and everything. It has that EXP functionality. Now, for anybody that has any questions out there, I can't see the questions right now. I'm running one screen, so John and Jason are paying attention to the questions. So if you have anything whatsoever, make sure that chat area that John was asking you to type in any questions whatsoever. They'll find a spot to interrupt me to bring that. Don't wait to the end. We do not wait to the end for questions. You have a question, you ask it immediately. Because if you wait to the end, that means we didn't care about the question before then, because you're going to forget it. So it sounds like we got one already.
Just a more procedural than anything else. Brett asked if we had any downloads for today. There are no downloads in the download section today. You will receive an email tomorrow, about this time tomorrow, with a link to view the recording of this session. You can record that as many times as you'd like, or watch that as many times as you'd like. Go ahead, proceed.
So yeah, so we do have some literature that we do have with these controls. So we do have expanded wiring installation manuals. But we also have a very large wiring guide, and unfortunately, it was a big guide, a lot of megabytes to it. So hit the website and download, and I'll show you some of those pictures on what the wiring guide is going to look like later on today too.
Dave, I will put a link to that in the chat section for everyone. So
awesome, thanks, JB.
You got it, man.
All right, so here we go with the ZVCs. All right. So before I talk about the Dash 5s, I want to talk about the Dash 4s for a second, the current offering. And this is going to be a rolling change throughout the market. So it's when the Dash 4s are gone and your wholesaler is going to bring in your Dash 5s. So you might have a smattering of both on there, but let's talk about what's currently on the controls. So when we look at this Dash 4, and unfortunately, my graphic got all messed up. This arrow is supposed to end right here where it says expansion ABC. And right here, this expansion means we were able to daisy chain multiple panels to each other, whether you had an SR or a ZVC, but you had one master, meaning this guy was in the boiler room and he was controlling the boiler and your hot water tank. Your other panels were just for zoning purposes. So if you had more than 6 zones in a house, you can run a 3-stat wire from one panel to the next and have that functionality. So you were able to do up to 120 zones through that expansion terminal. Now, the reason why 120 zones is because we did the testing with 10 6-zone panels and we never tested any further. So the exhaustive testing that we did said we can do 120 zones. So if you need more than 120 zones in a house, you might be over zoning. Okay, so that's a lot of zones in there. So, but I'm joking. But anyways, so that's what we did right now. You can do that on the board there. So that's through that expansion terminal. This plug right here, what we call the PC controls or power controls, we were able to tie in external controls to give you outdoor reset for a boiler or some mixing control. So you had the PC 700, which was a basic outdoor reset control that would plug into that terminal. You would wire in the sensors to that control, one outdoor sensor, boiler supply. You had the PC 702, which was a dual boiler control that you could rotate and stage 2 boilers and put them on outdoor reset. And then we had the PC 705, which was a variable speed injection mixing device. So you got outdoor reset, but controlling water temperature going out to, say, a radiant floor system. Those components would plug into here to get you that feature. The expansion board also gave us the 2 end switches, your main or your CH, your central heat, and your DHW or your priority zone would show up here. The standard boards did not have these dip switches. It didn't have the expansion. It only had one main end switch. So we also had fuses built in, and we got rid of the ice cube relays and went to a standard solid state relay instead. And we still supported the tankless coil. All right, there's a lot of boilers, a lot of markets out there that your domestic hot water is still coming off the coil of the boiler itself. So we still wanted to be able to give you that domestic hot water priority built in with those tankless coils out there. So we still had that ZC/ZR capabilities. And on the EXPs, if you notice, this board here is a 4-zone panel. So you got 4 thermostats across the top. You had 4 zone pumps across the bottom, but we also had an extra primary pump here. So that was for your boiler pump. So if you had that wall-hung boiler with an external circulator, you were able to control it from here. You didn't have to put it on the boiler itself, or maybe the boiler didn't have a terminal for it, but you had to make sure that got ran properly. So you could wire that in right here to that primary terminal. All right, a few more things on the Dash 4 that I want to review. We also had the common terminal for all your thermostats, which is so important nowadays as we start seeing more and more thermostats looking for that all-powerful C terminal. We brought the LEDs to the front, all right, where the Dash 2s, we had the LEDs across the side of the panel. Now we brought them to the front side of the panel instead. We were able to see it from looking straight on. Priority protection. All right, so we had priority, and priority is built into a 1-hour lockout, which means you turn priority on, you turn off the heating zones in the house, and if you don't satisfy in 1 hour, we'll turn the heat back on again, because that typically means there's something wrong with the domestic hot water load. But in here, we were able to turn that off, so you could have that priority call for longer than 1 hour. Very, very rare would you need to do it, but that's what we had on the Dash 4. We also had post purge, which means the last zone calls for heat. We're going to turn on the priority zone and take those BTUs and dump them into the indirect tank. And we also had pump exercise built in. So when zones aren't calling in the middle of the summer, we're going to make sure that circulator is going to be able to turn on. And we're just going to run it for, say, 30 seconds every 2 weeks, but you had an adjustability behind that. And we also added the larger terminal blocks, especially for your line voltage circulators here. So let's take a look at some of the enhancements. What did we change to the ZVC and SRs to the Dash 5s? So let's take a look at the exterior enhancements that we changed. So the first thing that we changed from looking at them, and this is going to be the same for both. Once we get under the hood, they're a little bit different for each controller, but on the outside, we made it 2 screws now and a hinged cover. All right, over here on the left-hand side, there's 2 tabs that the cover hooks onto, and you loosen up these 2 screws and the cover lifts off on a hinge, and then it lifts away. Not a permanent hinge. I remember one of the first prototypes they made, and they showed it to me one day as I came up to the office, and it was on a permanent hinge on this left-hand side. And I said, oh, cool, but not really, because I'm lefty. Right, so that cover was in my way, so we made it completely come off. Really simple. The beauty that I love about this thing too is as soon as you line up those 2 hinges, all right, those 2 tabs, it always falls down and grabs the 2 screws. I know in the Dash 4 models, whenever I was trying to remount the cover back onto a project, you'd miss 2 screws, either the top ones or the bottom ones, because you couldn't line them up wherever it was in relationship to your head. Right, so it always lands, it always puts right back where you want it to be. It may seem trivial, but we gave you a space to label the zones. I know the only zone that looks good, most guys rip out a Sharpie and just write on the cover what each zone is. The only zone that looks good is zone 1. After that, nothing looks good as you're trying to write with a Sharpie on the wall. All right, you get smart, you take the cover off, you put it on the desk and you write, but then again, it's still never comes out great looking, so we gave you space to write in the zones. We also gave LED outputs. So all the LEDs that we brought to the front side on the Dash 4s was about the zones that we're calling, but we never told you anything else that was happening inside. Was there a signal to the boiler? Did you have the primary pump calling for heat? So now we've given you those LEDs outputs now too. So now you can see what else is happening in the system itself. And one of my favorites, all right, we redesigned the cover to make clearance for all angle BX connectors. And I know there's a bunch of people out there applauding right now, going crazy that we got rid of that, because the very first time you put on, and I don't remember the brand that it was on that angle BX, but it was a really tight clearance. And when you put it on there and went to put the cover on, it didn't fit. So you had two choices to make. One, to take the wires out and put a spacer or a washer or another screw nut underneath that BX. So this way you gave a little space so you could put the cover on, or a small tool that went, and you grind that cover away, which I don't suggest doing, because technically that cover is a UL approved cover. So you're not allowed to modify it in any way. But yes, there was the reality to it too, especially on the bottom side of it. So maybe nobody saw that you did a little grinding to make the cover fit. So now we made clearance for all your angle BX connectors.
That sound you're hearing, Dave, is rejoicing amongst the populace. And there will be more as soon as you open up that cover, my friend.
Yes, that's right. All right, sorry for that. All right, so let's take a look under the hood and let's see what's going on under an SR panel in a project here. And what did we change inside? So basically, we have all the same things as the Dash 4 EXPs, all right, which means, but what we did add is we added knockouts to the back. So you always had the top and the bottom knockouts, but we also added these back knockouts for those applications where you don't want to see the wires coming out of the top and running all over the place. You have the space where you can go into the wall, turn around and come back out someplace else, really neaten it up. So that was a big request from a lot of contractors out there. They all have two end switches. So you got your main end switch, you got your priority end switch, but I want you to pay attention to that word right there where it says programmable. We have control over them, and I'll show you how we do that in a little bit. We also made our transformers replaceable. So in the Dash 4s, the transformers were riveted in, and they were replaceable. You did have a Molex plug on there that you can do it with, but you had to take the cover off the wall, you had to drill out the transformers, or you just added an external and replugged them in. So now we made them replaceable. So now it's just a tab and one screw, and you've got your Molex connector here again to do, and just plug it in. Now, when you look at this SR panel, you can also add one to it. So we have a spot with an extra plug here for your second transformer. And that is going to be in the case of when you're using some very high power thermostats, anything that's Wi-Fi capable type of thermostats that have a very nice color display. All right. Those are taking a lot of juice, and your SR panels only come with 120 VA transformer because it doesn't take a lot to drive the circuitry on this board and your standard 2-wire thermostats. When we start looking at some of those 3-wire thermostats that have a battery that needs to be charged, not replaceable, now we start looking at having to add more power to it. So you can add in a 40 VA. So if you are looking at adding, say, a Nest style or Ecobees that are running the power from this board, you do want to add an extra transformer onto here. Because the one thing I did learn recently, and I heard it from somebody, so I have to do a little bit more research and confirm it. But the latest generation of Nest thermostats are calling for 21 VA. All right. So how many can we run off of one board? None. Because it's a 20 VA that's on here. If it's 21 on the thermostat, we don't have any leftover juice to run the board. So weird stuff happens. You put two of them on here, and all of a sudden one's going to work, and it probably will. But then you add the second one in, and when the second one calls for heat, all of a sudden the screen on the first one blanks out, right? Those are indications of not enough power. Or you've got relays that are staying closed, and you're getting heat in zones that satisfied a while ago, and the thermostat said it's satisfied, but the relay inside the stat stayed closed. So weird stuff happens, right? Always take a look at that. Make sure you got enough juice based upon the thermostats. This is going to cover off, this transformer is going to cover off on 90% of the thermostats out there. All right. It's just that last 10% where you might need to add an extra transformer in here. So just think of that.
Now, Dave, before you move on, the process of adding a transformer, just physically is pretty simple. The wiring portion, you notice there's that second Molex connection plug there. You're going to need to connect it via a Molex connection. So Can those be field fabricated, or do they need to buy that from us?
Well, we do have it as an RP part. We have a 20 and a 40 VA that does have that plug already on there. If you were to try to do it in the field, you're just going to have to cut this off of a dead transformer, so to speak. All right. We don't have the plugs sold separately, but you would have to just make it yourself if this was a faulty transformer that smoked, that let up its magic smoke on the inside. And you'd have to do it yourself, I guess, with some wire nuts if you really wanted to, but you can get the RP parts. And I know I've spoken to a lot of wholesalers out there that are making sure that they keep at least 40 VAs in stock. So if you were to smoke this one, there's no reason why you can't drop a 40 in here. Now, also what it does that we did on the board itself, the older controls, the dash 4s, if you had 2 transformers in the box, transformer 1 serviced half of it and transformer 2 serviced the second half. What we do now is that we add them through. Okay, so it's not splitting the board in half like one of them's doing thermostats and the other one's doing zone valves. Now it's all shared throughout the entire circuitry. So that was a big change as well. So this way to make sure that we have enough juice everywhere.
That's an important thing for everybody out there to remember, because this is an easy thing to get right. It's also an easy thing to get wrong, and you don't want to have any issues out there in the field. So if you're adding a transformer, best thing to do be get it from us. You can field fabricate one, but you're going to need that Molex plug to make it work.
Right. Yep. And over here we have 2 programmable auxiliary outputs. So here, very similar to what we were talking about before on the dash 4, we had primary pump. But we have 2 auxiliary pumps. So that boiler primary pump would be auxiliary pump number 2 here. Auxiliary pump number 1 is a little bit different at the moment. I'll show you what that is coming up. And then here's your zone pumps going across. The other big change that we did from the dash 4 to the dash 5 is that we used our priority zone back to zone 1. In the dash 4 models, your priority zone was the last zone on the board. Here we moved everybody to the front now for your priority zone. All right, a few more things that we did when we take a look at this board. All right, we still have that same expansion port. All right, so that expansion port now is 4 wires, but you're going to use 3. So we're going to use A, B, and ground, I believe. And I'm working off of memory here, and too many numbers running through my head right now. But the wiring diagram will show you how to do the expansion. What I mean by participating OEM, that we can actually, in the future, we plan for communication between manufacturers of boilers and us, so that they can actually have an internal communication via Modbus at the moment. So right now, that is a future expansion that we can do with some manufacturers. Right here, you'll see this XX terminal, and it says sensor. So this is adding a 10K sensor where I can do domestic hot water recirc. And so if you add a sensor here, you automatically assign auxiliary pump number 1 to run your recirc pump. So you have this controller on board for your hydronics in the house, and you're adding domestic hot water recirc. You don't need to go to the smart plug. This has our Smart Plus technology built in to learn when to run a pump for your hot water recirc systems. And you guys have been to some of our Takeo Tuesdays where we've talked about how to control your recirc pump. So that is built into here already, so it's eliminating the need for some other components. It also allows you to look at recirc and using Smart Plus technology in commercial applications, because our smart plug typically couldn't be used. You couldn't have a receptacle to plug in a pump. It needed to have a hard wire to it. So now this gives us that capabilities of adding Smart Plus to commercial applications. We're still supporting our tankless coils. And like I said, we have those auxiliary lights extra coming out. And we gave you a few more ground screws. If you notice, the circuit board got much smaller. The control box itself got about a 1/4 inch bigger all the way around. So we gave you a lot more room for wiring inside. That was probably the #1 request, was more ground screws and more space to wire, as well as those angle BX connectors was asked for. So, and all the controllers are the exact same footprint that we have here. All right, so let's take a look at the zone valve controls. All right. And
can I jump in real quick, Dave? I did check the wiring guide. It's A, B, and ground for your expansion. So go AB to ground, AB to ground, AB to ground.
Yep. Okay. That's what I thought. I think the 24-volt terminal would be used for your Modbus communication.
Yep.
All right. So zone valve controls. Now this job site, when this one went in, he did use the back knockouts on here, as you can tell, because you don't see any of the wires coming from the board right over to the pump and the zone valves. All right. A friend of mine up in Albany did this install in his own house. And so let's see, same thing as the EXPs and same as the SRs. We got the back knockouts. We still have the programmable boiler end switches. Now, when it comes to transformers on the ZVCs, these start off with 140 VA and the 5 and 6s already have 2 because we don't know what zone valves you're tying into here. So if you're using, say, the 570 series, our heat motor zone valves, that's a large powered zone valve. So we're giving you enough juice to drive those. But if you're looking at actuators or the Zone Sentry at a very low power draw, all right, now you've got some leftover juice to run your thermostats as well. So again, you got to add up the total VAs of the project to make sure that you have enough power. With this, 80 VA is going to be kind of hard to use up. You're going to have 6 Nest thermostats and 6 MV, heat motor zone valves. The 570 series. So that's a lot of juice right there. And the other thing that we added to the zone valve board, the old boards, the dash 4s, you brought line voltage into the transformers, all right, with wire nuts or murettes, depending on where you are. Now what we did is that we brought line voltage to a terminal. And by bringing it to a terminal, it also allowed us a little bit different as well. So the old ZVCs, when it came to your circulator outputs, those were dry contacts. So we had to bring power in to make them wet contacts. Now what we did, since we have the line voltage terminal landing on the ZVC board, we also made the circulator outputs wet contacts as well. So we've got juice on these terminals. They're not dry contacts now. So if you are looking at replacement, you're pulling off an old dash 4 and putting a dash 5 in its place, just remember that there's power coming out of these terminals. You don't want power going in to where there's already power. It doesn't like to play well with each other. That sandbox gets crowded really fast. So, and now we've also got 3 pump outputs on here, and they are programmable again. Again, we still have that auxiliary pump number 1 can be for recirc. All right, and then we have boiler pump and zone heating pump, but they're programmable, so we get to do other things with those pumps if you want to do as well. All right, a few more things that are going to be the same as our SR panel like we saw before. We have that again, that same expansion port, the recirc plus built in. Now this one on the dip switches here, we have added an extra line item on here that's called time delay for zone valves without end switches. So there are some manufacturers out there that are starting to get rid of the end switch on your zone valve. And it's a cost savings because it's usually the one thing that fails. So they're getting rid of that component and to make wiring easier, but you still need to have that time delay because if you don't have the end switch, I look at end switches and zone valves as a proving switch. It proved that the valve opened up. And if the valve opened up, now I can go ahead and turn my circulator on, and then I can go ahead and fire my boiler. Because if I don't have a zone valve open and I turn a pump on and fire the boiler, and I have no place for those BTUs to go, the boiler is going to either, one, have some issues and trip out on you or shut down. And we start seeing some short cycling happening. And we don't want that to happen at all. So now we have a time delay built in. So instead of having to cheat it, if you were to use a zone valve board like this, you would have to put a jumper across 3 and 4. So this way you can turn the pump on and fire the boiler because that's our sequence of operation. Thermostat calls, sends power to the zone valve, end switch in the zone valve closes, then turns the pump and fires the boiler. So otherwise it'd be firing the boiler and the pump immediately with 0 flow. So now we have that time delay built in, and we have those auxiliary lights outputs as well. And again, better wiring inside the box itself. So that's what we've seen under the hood of our zone valve controls and the switching relays. Any questions out there, John? How we doing?
Oh, we're cruising right along. I think it's important to note too that with that time delay, it really isn't about deadheading the pump because the little circulators we use, They can deadhead for a little bit and it's not going to bother them. We can deadhead them for a while and it's not going to bother them. Not that we should. It's that if they do deadhead for a little bit, it's not a big deal. This time delay is really more for the boiler than anything else.
Right. Right. Yep. So so yeah, and that's so I think that yeah, I'm starting to see more and more zone valves right now. A few of the manufacturers actuators on your radiant manifolds are coming that way. So you're seeing some of them that way. All right, so let's review the dip switches that we see. So here in the switching relays, the dip switches, a lot of them are going to remain the same. All right, so like the master expansion terminal, that's going to remain the same as it was before. Master means this is the one that's in control in the boiler room. I'm controlling your boiler, I'm controlling your hot water tank. So that's that main panel. All the other panels that would go through the expansion terminals, all right, those will be set up to be expansion. All right, they don't have any control over the boiler, but it makes wiring easier because if you didn't use the expansion, because you're still running 3 wires from one control to the other, and someone says, well, can I just take 2 wires from the end switch and tie them into the same end switch on the boiler itself? Well, sometimes and sometimes not, right? You might need to have isolation relays so we're not backfeeding and stuff like that. So this just makes that wiring a little bit easier and making sure the proper pumps and zones turn on. Now we also see the same thing, priority on off. All right, so when you look at these dip switches in here and you see the label at the top where it says off and on, that doesn't mean it's turned off. That just is giving us a designation, not for everything, right? So that's why priority on off, yes, that does mean on off. But the next line item here is talking primary pump. And if you are wiring the boiler pump to this relay panel, and it is say a wall hung boiler with the pump underneath it, and we branch off and we go to my zone pumps, all right, going out to the house itself, but it depends on where you put your indirect tank on what you need this pump to do. So if your indirect went on the system as a zone with the others, that means my boiler pump needs to run when I get a call for heat. So I'm going to take this switch and flick it to on to make sure the primary pump turns on for every call for heat, whether it's a heating call or domestic. Now, there's some boiler manufacturers that are going to want the indirect tied into the boiler loop coming off right before the boiler pump or the primary pump. So if that happens, I want to turn that pump off on a domestic hot water call. So this way, I don't have to turn these off. If I turn off my primary pump, I've got domestic hot water priority built in. That way, I don't want this pump to run because it's going to take BTUs and send it out to my system itself. So let's make sure I dedicate everything going to the indirect tank. So again, this depends, and now we're customizing the controller to match your system that you have out there. Okay, so that's what's going on here. The next line here, you'll see post-purge. And what post-purge here is going to do, before we had to go to the priority tank, now it's going to put it into the house. So it's the last zone that calls for heat, is going to keep it on for 2 minutes and take those BTUs that were in the boiler, and we're going to dump it into the house itself. And then the last line item here, you'll see this pump exercise on or off, which means the last zone calls for heat. Nothing's turned on for 2 weeks. We're going to run the circulators for 30 seconds to make sure we don't seize up when heating season kicks back in again. So this is typically used during the summertime.
Hey, Dave, we have a question from Ivan,
Yes,
who asks, is there a difference in wiring when using a normally open versus a normally closed zone valve? And I would suggest no, there isn't, but I wanted to make sure we had that right. Is there a difference?
No. I mean, if you've got a system out there where the valve is going to be normally open and you get this call for heat, so it's now you got to make sure if it's a call for heat or is it just a signal to turn it on. Typically, we're using normally closed zone valves, okay, which means I send the signal to it and then it powers up the motor and goes opposite, and meaning open, normally closed, meaning normally just sitting there, not doing anything, the valve is closed. Right, and that's what we like to see typically in our systems, right? Normally open means it's just sitting there. I'm going to have flow if a pump turns on. So You just got to make sure you have the proper control platform. But yes, you would wire them into here the same. So it all depends on your input at the thermostat switches coming in here. So excellent question, Ivan. Thank you.
Yeah, it's more of a what do we want to have happen when the end switch for that zone valve, the output closes, and that would close the valve. When do we? It's an application in a, what do you want that thing to do? Kind of a question rather than a wiring question.
All right. Now let's take a look at the dip switches that we have on the zone valve control, and you're going to see the master expansion and priority remaining the same. Primary pump, again, is doing the same thing as before. Depends on where the domestic hot water is typed into the system itself. We'll see that we have post purge on. Now here on a zone valve control, post purge is going to the indirect tank. All right, which means if you turn post purge on, you must make sure that your indirect tank does have a mixing valve on it feeding out to the house. All right, because you could keep on getting extra BTUs dropped into that tank and you can get elevated temperatures in there. So make sure you put a mixing valve that's feeding all your fixtures in the house going out to the house itself if you turn post purge on, if you have a zone valve controller. We do have the pump exercise built into here as well. And like I said, we do have the 2-wired zone valves in here in the dip switches, like I said before. So excellent. Now I got these little stars all over the place because these are also the defaults. We can change a lot of these settings that you'll see between the zone valve control and the switching relay. Anything that has that star, that asterisk there, means I have customization over it. I can change it, but these are the defaults: 2 minutes, 30 seconds every 2 weeks, and the time delay to the zone valves is a 1 minute. But we also have control over boiler end switches and what we can do with the auxiliary pumps as well. But wait, there's more, right? I mean, this is just so freaking exciting right now.
There's more?
There's more.
I can't believe that there would actually be more. This is so cool.
So the more that we have is that we have this add-on. So I was talking about the PC controls before, the PC 700, 702, 705, all right, that we have out there. But now we don't have the option for that, adding that PC 700 control, but we have this component right here in the middle of the board that can get snapped in there that we call the PC 800. And the PC 800 plugs into any -5 board and will give you outdoor reset like the PC 700 did. Now, we didn't do the PC 702 for dual boiler control because most boilers today do have the functionality to communicate to each other for a dual boiler setup. Okay, so we don't have the PC 702, so we have our boiler outdoor reset module built into here. As we zoom in, all right, and take a look at what it has, you'll see 2 terminals over here on the right-hand side. That's going to be boiler sensor and outdoor sensor, which means we can do outdoor reset control, but we can also do indoor reset, or as I like to call it, load compensation.
Whoa. Wait a minute. That sounds pretty freaking cool, I got to tell you. But just if I can interrupt you 1 second, Dave. We see all the people who've got something else open over their over the player. I want everybody to just come back because this is the coolest thing ever. I gotta believe. This is the coolest piece of add-on equipment I've seen in years. You're gonna love it. So just my 2 cents worth, Dave. You take it away.
All right, you got it, brother. You got it. So what's the difference? What's the difference between outdoor boiler reset and indoor reset? All right. So your outdoor reset, we've been doing this for decades, okay, which means you have an outdoor temperature sensor. It's monitoring what's going on outside, and it sees what water temperature we're sending out to the heating system, and it's going to modulate it based upon a reset curve that you program. So, and that curve is going to be based upon a reset ratio. So, and that could be, say, a 1.5 ratio, which means for every 1.5 degree change outside, we're going to change the water temperature by 1 degree. So pretty straight linear line that you're doing there. There's a couple of assumptions that have to be done there. One, that the boiler is closely matched to the heat loss. of the house, because the whole idea of adding outdoor reset is to add some efficiency. Simple add-on of an outdoor reset control, you can gain 10 to 15%. I've seen more that some systems get. There's a ... It depends. We want to make sure the boiler is closely sized to that heat loss. If it's oversized, now we start short cycling like mad. And two, one zone. Again, it doesn't know what's happening inside the house. It's assuming that, hey, everybody's calling for heat. So if you can fine tune, I mean, really fine tune the outdoor reset curve, all right, and that means it takes a little bit of time, couple of heating seasons, you're adjusting the temperatures and the numbers and also the jazz. Technically, the boiler should never shut off. All right, you're modulating that water temperature, and you're going to see really long on times and you're going to see really long off times, right? Because when's the boiler most efficient?
When it's off.
When it's off, right? So, but when is a boiler really efficient?
When it's on.
When I got nice long run times, right? So that's what we're really trying to get out of that outdoor reset, weather compensation, but it doesn't take into account what's going on indoors. So the indoor reset, the load compensation, we're only going to use one boiler, one sensor, and we're going to strap it on the boiler supply side. And what now we're going to do is look at the number of zones that are calling, the runtime of those zones, and we're going to start the water temperature low and start ramping it up based upon what's happening inside.
Ooh.
So if the zones are running and they're not satisfied, all right, and it's taken too long of a time, well, we need to start ramping up that water temperature. It might be too low. So we do the programming calculations. Now it's paying attention to what's actually happening, the BTUs that are coming out of the boiler. So it could be based upon number of zones that you have going on, what's happening in the house, what's the target temperature, what's your actual temperature in the space. Now, we're not reading the temperatures upstairs. We're only reading boiler temperature coming out, and we'll start ramping it up that way. So now we're making systems that much more efficient, because we don't all live in seminar land where everything is perfectly sized. All right. We teach a lot of things here, right? And if everybody installed every system in seminar land, then there'd be no more training classes to be done.
So instead of going to high fire right away, right? High fire modulating down, it starts low and ramps up.
Correct. Correct.
Love it.
Yep. So that's what our load compensation is happening here. So you have the choice to do one or the other here. You pick one as you're working through it. Again, you might be used to that outdoor reset. Maybe you got that cast iron boiler, but we can change a lot of the parameters. Now, the other thing that we have here is this extra terminal, this output plus minus that you see here on the screen. Now, this terminal is a 0 to 10 or a 4 to 20 milliamp output. All right. And what that is going to do is now go communicate to something else, like a boiler. And a lot of our newer boilers today do have a 0 to 10 input, which means it's going to tell the boiler what level to fire to based upon what's going on in the house. So when you get a call to heat to your ModCon boiler, if it's the first zone that kicks on, the first thing the boiler does is bang up to 100% firing rate and says, oh, wait a minute, we don't need to do this. Let's slowly work my way down if it's only one zone calling. Where instead what we're going to do is we're going to send a 0 to 10 volt signal across those wires and tell the boiler exactly what to fire to. So for those of you that aren't familiar with 0 to 10, what this means, if I were to send a 10 volt signal across this wire, what it means the controller is trying to do is, boiler, give me everything you got, go to 100%. If I send a 5 volt signal, boiler, I don't need as much, I only need half of you. So I'm going to send 5 volts across. All right. Now, 4 to 20 control platform. What's nice in this controller is when there are systems out there that have a 0 to 10 or 4 to 20 input signal, so you have to determine what you're tying into, you would have to cheat this and sometimes put some resistors across the terminals in order to make this work. All you have to do for us is choose what you got. All right, so you don't have to cheat it. You tell it whether it's 0 to 10 or 4 to 20 and you're done. All right, so 4 to 20, same idea. All right, but again, it's what that input signal is going to be if the boiler allows it. So now you've got a true command center rather than just a switching relay. This is now a command center for the boiler and to gain the efficiency out of your system by dropping in the PC800. So when you get the PC800, it comes with the one sensor, standard 10K sensor that you can use for load compensation. If you want to go to outdoor reset, then you go ahead and you add the external sensor to it. Okay, so you'll get that for your outdoor reset. And if you don't have a boiler that does a 0 to 10 input, well, hey, maybe you can tie it into a circulator that accepts a 0 to 10 that will speed up and down. That'd be cool, right? Or a mixing valve that has a 0 to 10 input, so we can tell what water temperature to send it that way. So we get a bunch of things that we can do with this. All you do is snap this into the four corners, all right, and there's a terminal strip right here that snaps onto that board. Now, how do we get all those controls, all right, and all that functionality that I've been talking about that I can program? So there's no digital display on the front side, and we felt we don't want to add a display to these boards where somebody has to, look at it once. You look at it once, you do the setup, and you're done, all right? Everybody carries around the best display in the world already, all right? It's right here, all right? Everybody already has this in their possession. So what we did is that we created an app. Now, the one thing I want everybody to remember, if you wire and do everything like we had before in our Dash 4s, you don't need the app. The app allows us to get to the special functions, to add some functionality to the system, to add that efficiency to it. So you don't have to use it, all right? The app lets us customize it to your installs. So what can we do with it? Well, for example, we can now have controls never be obsolete. All right, so I can update my firmware as we write more code for these things in the future, as boilers change in the future, as other components change in the future. We're trying to future-proof the control so we can update the firmware. Now we can do things like name the zones and name the outputs. We get to change the settings for the Smart Plus, and we get to import and export that data as well, which means I can export my settings. So this way, if somebody comes back in the future and changes it on me, I can easily import that information back up in there and get it back up and running again, rather than going through the entire programming process. And we can also get some diagnostics. All right, what's going on? Are there any failures or whatnot? But here's some of the things that we get to control. And I'm not going to go into a deep dive onto the app itself because it's just not easy to get that to work with GoToWebinar. Coming off of my phone, I'd have to sit there and hold my phone up to the screen, which I'm not going to do. All right, so I got some screenshots to show you some basic functionality. But we can control when the boiler fires, when does priority fire, when do the circulators turn on and off. All right, and here's also where I can do my indoor boiler reset and outdoor reset settings. So for example, let's take a look at the first page here. This is showing me you log in, you connect it to the controller. So you'll see here it says SR504. All right, so that SR504 is the guy I'm communicating to. If you had more than one 504 on a job site, you can click right here on this flash LED. And what that's going to do is flash the green power light so you know exactly which board you're talking to. Now up here at the top, you're going to see this, and this comes as a confusion point for a lot of people out there, and it says connected controllers, and underneath it, it says no connected controllers. This is looking for anybody wired to the EXP terminals, that expansion terminal. So I had a second board daisy chained in here, it would show up right there. Okay, that's where it's going to show up. So right now this is showing nobody's connected. Now you're down here, you can see zone status, device settings, notes. You can add notes every time you visit the job site. Your help section here, which will get you to tech services, will also get you to the website for any instructions and whatnot. Here you can see device info, some of your settings. Here's your import and export, and here's disconnecting. Now, the way you communicate with this is Bluetooth, not Wi-Fi. All right, it's just Bluetooth through the phone or tablet, whatever you're using. It's just a handshake protocol. It is not pairing like you have a headset. It is just going to be a communication at that one time. So let's say I click on zone status here for a second, and I click on my zone status, and you can see the names of the zones. You get to rename these if you want. You'll see this little light on the left-hand side. If it was lit up green, that zone would be calling for heat right now. Now, I know there's a few people here that love going up and down the stairs. to check your zones, to make sure you wire them properly. So you go up there, upstairs, turn on zone number 1 in the kitchen space, come back downstairs, make sure that pump turned on. If you want to double check your wiring right here, you just hit the force on. All right. And that circulator, while you're standing there right in front of it's going to turn on. I know some people need their steps and get their flights in each day.
I was just going to say. Brief aside, that's the life we're living right now in the training department.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I got my steps in yesterday. I got a 3.5 hour delay in the airport. So yeah, I got my 12,000 steps in yesterday.
Good man. Good man.
So, and if you wanted to change the name, you just tap on the name itself and you'll see a screen that pops up right here that says enter name for zone 1. Now, the one thing I get all the time is people ask me, well, how are we going to keep the homeowners from messing around with it? Well, one, you can't, right? Because it's theirs. They bought it. But actually, in order to start changing any of the settings in here, we do have it password protected and or a QR code that's on the inside of the cover. So you got to take the cover off and you'll see a QR code or the password there. If the homeowner went that far, go ahead and make changes. But that's the beauty behind the import export functionality. If you exported all the functions that you programmed in, all you have to do is come back and import it again. And then once you import it and you get it up and running again, the last thing you do is get paid, right, for that 5 minutes worth of work and tying into it. So, yeah.
Dave, the other thing about it that people do get concerned about apps and homeowners is, first off, it's an installation app. It's not an operating app. There's nothing that a homeowner can do with that app that's going to enhance their experience with their heating system. It's simply an installer's app. The only way they would know about it is if somebody told them. You know, I mean, yeah, could they conceivably go to our website and find out that there's an app? Well, sure. If they're going to go that far, then there's not much you can do about it. But be realistic. The chances are of a homeowner kind of saying, "Oh boy, there's an app. I'm going to get in and mess with it." There's a few speed bumps and roadblocks in their way. But ultimately, as Dave said, they own it. They bought it. They can do whatever they want with it. You do have some safeguards available. But again, the only way they'd know is if someone actually informed them that there was an app. Don't do that.
Exactly right. So it's a customized, they're not seeing thermostats. They're not, seeing the things that they want to see. All right. So how do we add some of this efficiency that I was talking about before, for example, and these micro zones? So I have control over the boiler end switch. Okay. And what I mean by that is, when do I want the boiler to fire off? And you would think, well, whenever any zone calls. Well, stop and think about that for a second, because how many zones is normal today? There is no such thing as normal, right? On how many zones you have in a house. A lot of people will say 3 to 4, some say 2 to 3. I've got 6 in my house. All right. So we're starting to see a lot of micro zones show up in houses. So for example, let's take this example. You got a little tiny zone in a house. It's radiant floors. You've got a powder room with a hallway that ties up to the mud room of the house. It's tiny. All right. And the name I give this is zone sequencing, which means if zone 3 is the only thermostat in the house that happens to be calling right now, don't fire the boiler. Turn the water pump, turn the pumps on, open the zone valves, let water flow through the system itself. If it's a boiler that's got any mass to it and it's warm, hey, that's somewhat free BTUs right now. You might as well use it. You spent money making those BTUs. Because when's the boiler most efficient? When it's off. And I've got BTUs sitting in there. Let me use it to heat that zone. So what that means is, it's not going to be the only zone calling for heat for long. There will be another zone that kicks on. So I want to make sure that zone 3 doesn't turn the boiler on, but other zones will. So for example, you click on, what you'll click on is this view outputs at the bottom here. So you'll see this view outputs tab. And when you click the view outputs, it pops up to this screen here. And my outputs is main boiler end switch, priority end switch, auxiliary 1, auxiliary 2. Now the next page looks the same for each one of these outputs. And when I click on it, all right, let's say I tap on main boiler end switch, you'll see this screen pop up and it shows your default is checked. And then activate zone 1, 2, 3, 4, which means any call for heat makes the boiler fire. So what I want to do is I want to uncheck the default and turn on zone 1, zone 2, and zone 4, which means zone 3 does not make the boiler fire, but it makes everything else happen down the line as you're operating this. Okay, so how do you keep boilers efficient? Keep them off, but then also have more load onto these boilers as we start looking at these smaller ModCon boilers, making sure that they're going to condense at the same time and not short cycle. Okay, so that's just one example of how we can control our systems to be better and more efficient. So here's that expansion the portion of it. So when you have the expansion from one to the other, you'll see under the main panel, this is not the main panel, there'll be a first screen. And if you had 2 controls that are there, you'll see all of them populate on the screen. But if you have them wired through the expansion, you'll only see one, and you'll only see this SR panel. And that has been, I can't find the ZVC. Well, because the ZVC is not the master panel, it's the expanded panel. This is how you access the ZVC. You actually tap on it right here on the screen, and you'll get access to the ZVC. And then you'll see you'll have less settings that you can do here. All right. And I can go back to the SR by either hitting the back button here or tapping it on here, get back to here. Okay. So you'll see disconnect device. We don't have that button down here because you're not talking to the ZVC via Bluetooth. You're talking ZVC via Bluetooth through the SR, then through the wires tied into this control. All right. So just a little thing there, just so you understand what's going on how they can tie in. And you would see them all listed right here if you had multiple panels. But wait, there's more still.
How could there be more, Dave? How could there be more?
We're coming back to the PC800 and how you program it and customize it that way.
Have I mentioned how much I love the PC800? Have I mentioned how much that just makes me so happy and excited? I love that little guy.
It is a pretty cool little component to add on to to your systems right here. So this is showing a quick wiring portion on how to tie in, say, the PC800 with indoor reset on a cast iron boiler. All right. So this cast iron boiler, it doesn't have a priority end switch. It's going to have your main end switch here. All right. And here's some of the things that you can choose on changing the settings. So when you click on it and you get to the advanced mode, you'll see the mode type. Right now I chose indoor reset, which then says, all right, what type of boiler do you have here? And if you're not sure what you've got, always check with the manufacturer. Cast iron boiler here is going to be an on-off, so you have the choices between modulating 0 to 10, modulating 4 to 20, or on-off. And if you do choose modulating, so we kind of made the app idiot-proof, meaning, well, the world's making better and better idiots all the time, but if
it's evolution at work, man.
yeah. If your boiler components doesn't have modulation, like if I were to do on off here, this wouldn't be there. That'd be gone. All right. You wouldn't have that choice in the app to change the modulation. So what this is specific to the boiler. You have to find out what is the minimum modulation. So I have found most boilers are going to be around a 20%. But it does depend on the manufacturer. So you'll have to check on it. Response time means how fast do you want that temperature to change? All right, on that response time. And then you have your minimum boiler temperature and your differentials, your efficiency, meaning cast iron, how fast again do you want it to operate, and your max temperature. So when you click on these things, they're going to be either slider bars or just radio buttons like this. Okay, so this way, it does make it easier to make those selections on what you're choosing on here. Okay, there's an example of the slider bar, and you can fine tune it with the plus minus buttons on here. And again, here's your outdoor reset settings. Now you got PC800 with 2 sensors on it going through the system itself, and same idea, same settings, doesn't look much different compared to looking at outside air temperature. Okay. Oh, there we go. Wow. Did I get it? I did. I got it in time. Look at that. I think I ended 1 minute at a time. Wow. So if there are any questions, everybody out there, John and I and Jason are going to stay online as long as you want us to. read off any. Jason, any questions out there from people, or any questions from you too at the same time? As I take a slug of water here for a moment.
Looks like John's answered some in the chats here. Pretty quiet on the chats.
Yeah, our friend Brett Guerrero had a kind of an in-depth question on integrating a couple of air handlers in with a ZVC and trying to keep transformers on the air handlers from fighting with the transformers on the ZVC. Shared with them that if you download for the group in general, download the wiring guide, which is in your chat. The link to that is in your chat section. Download that. You'll go to pages 71 to 73. You'll see wiring schematics for our basically our air handler fan, our hot air fan control unit.
Oh, the HAFC.
The HAFC, right. And then you can wire your air handlers into that, and there's an output there that just basically serves as the thermostat, and you just connect that into the ZVC and you rock it and you roll it, and all is good. So we do have the ability to create a multi-outlet kind of system, with different types of heat delivery. So the versatility is really pretty impressive, I think.
The HAFCs did not change, so we did not make any changes to that control platform. So again, your HAFC is doing that interface to your air handlers that are hydronically based. So one, we're making sure you could add thermistors to it, so this way you can control the water temperature, or making sure that you don't turn the fan on until you got warm water at the air handler. Right. That's the biggest complaint people have with warm air hydronics, is that the air temperature goes up and down. So you have that time delay built in. You can control the circulator there if you wanted to. And here looks like you wanted to do a zone valve, so you would just take the end switch instead of going straight to a boiler to tell it to fire. You come to the end switch, tell the zone valve, don't wire the pump into it. You're just going to use that for your thermostat and air handler communication. Beautiful, love it. More than one way to skin a cat when it comes to controls, definitely.
Absolutely.
Take a look at that wiring guide. That wiring guide is everything you ever wanted to know about wiring plus. So,
but we're afraid to ask. Wait, that's
afraid to ask. Yeah, going after that late 60s, early 70s book there. Yes. We also show you how to tie in a -2 to a -5, and as well as -4s to -5s. So if you're looking at some older replacements and how do you make everybody still communicate, everything is in there. It's colored. Drawings everywhere, and we've included piping diagrams as well, showing you the dip switches, and we'll also show you when that you need to use the app and when you don't need to use it. So based upon those scenarios that you come into the wiring guide. So the wiring guide, huge wealth. It is downloadable as a PDF. We also have hard copies. So if you're looking for a hard copy, make sure you contact your TACO rep, get a hard copy from those guys out there. They can even give you that spiral bound. I think it's 98 pages long of everything in there that you wanted to know. So excellent.
Cool. Very cool. Hey, Dave, did I mention how much I love that PC800?
I think you might have mentioned that.
I think there's a dead horse here, and I'm just beating it. I got to stop, man.
Let me bring it back up so you can look at it now.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. I got to tell you, folks, that thing, when you start talking about simple little add-ons that can really enhance efficiency, even with a ModCon boiler, snip the wires to the outdoor sensor, put in that, give it indoor reset. You're going to seriously see some differences in fuel consumption and overall comfort, and B, overall system efficiency. You start to combine that with, other things I really like Delta T circulators. Now we're going to turn a really good, pretty efficient system into an outstanding, extremely efficient system. There's maintaining
the comfort. The important thing is still maintain the comfort too. Yes.
All right, because you can turn any system into a really efficient system. Just turn the thermostat to 50. Yeah, you're not going to use much fuel then. The comfort might be iffy, but you get the idea. But these are just really cool things that you can do that can do that. Turn the system into a unicorn. Highly efficient, highly comfortable, and fairly simple if you think about it. And that indoor reset's the key. Plus, you get into Delta T pumping. So
excellent.
That's all I have to say. Maybe I've said too much.
Not at all. Not at all. that wasn't, you couldn't say that in one word.
No, and,
Or-
and
or one
especially me,
sentence.
especially me. Yeah.
Definitely.
Our running gag in the training department is when talking to the boss, understand that why use a sentence when he has a perfectly good paragraph ready to go.
We get paid by the word.
Yeah. So technically, yeah. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, great. Any last minute questions out there, my friends, for Dave and for Jason and for myself? Great job as usual, Dave. And one of these days, both Jason and I will be ready to do this on our own.
I'm sure enough. Yes.
Getting close.
Dave's our controls guru, and we kind of defer to him. But this is terrific stuff, and hope you guys have great success with our new generation controls. And as always, any questions, our tech services department is there and ready to help, as are Jason, Dave, and I. So have yourselves a grand old Tuesday, my friends, and we will see you next time on Takeo Tuesday. Oh, wait, before they go, Takeo After Dark tomorrow night, guys.
That's right.
Takeo After Dark tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Eastern time. Please join us on your favorite social media platform. We're going to be streaming live on I always say Instagram. We're going to be streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and LinkedIn Live. So join us on any of those three, or you can sign up on GoToWebinar as well and join us in the traditional method. But Dave, Jason, and I will be talking about controls again tomorrow night. And we also have a very special guest, a fourth member of our elite training team, Mr. Tony First, who's a commercial guy.
Cool.
Tony's a commercial guy, and one of the 3 or 4 smartest people I think I've ever met. You know, he starts talking about systems, I kind of nod like I understand what he's saying. You know, but he's talking about, well, the chiller plant, and those were, okay, I got you. Lost me at commercial. But he'll talk about some of the differences between commercial and residential hydronic heating systems. He's going to really kind of dive into several other elements. We just all want to hear about Tony's life, because man has had a very deep and varied career and has led a very interesting life. He rides a Harley, you know, and that's I got mad respect for anybody who can do that. But please join us tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Eastern time. If you're out someplace else, well, you're going to have to do the math, because I can't figure it out for you. But yeah, Takeo After Dark tomorrow night on all those live platforms. So we're really looking forward to seeing you there.
Very
Excellent. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Unfortunately, I don't remember what the next Takeo Tuesday is. I'm sure the commercial team is taking it over. I usually pull up a slide and take a look at it, but I was doing some training classes this morning, so I didn't get to the website. So take a look at the website, takeocomfort.com/training. They'll take care of you.
You want to wait 2 seconds there, Dave? I got you. The next one is November 4th. It is a commercial session, HVAC, hydronic pump curves, and proper pump selection, which should be awesome. That'll be Tony and Rich Medeiros will be delivering that presentation. You're going to learn how to read a pump curve, best efficiency points, design points, net positive suction head required, and all that really great stuff. Also, you'll be talking about variable speed curves, parallel pump selection, and using Takeo selection software. The guys pack a lot of information in a short period of time. You'll love it. If you're a commercial guy, this will be the one to go to.
All right, everybody.
Thanks,
Awesome.
boys.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
So
See you
long.
next time.